So our in-person schedule, right now, this is a tentative schedule. Our bargaining units are still negotiating what this is going to look like. So it may change. I just wanted to put that out there. But let's go ahead and take a look at it. So as you can see, I'm going to go ahead and explain through this the best that I can. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, we are going to be running school in person from approximately 8 o'clock in the morning to 12:20 p.m. On Wednesday, it's going to look a little different as we want to make sure that we are protecting that common planning time for teachers that they do get on Wednesday. And so that kind of makes our exit, our dismissal a little bit earlier between 11:20 and 11:40. If you'll notice on the arrival times, there are two of them, and then the same with the exit times. These are specific to classrooms so that we don't have a huge number of students leaving at one time and a huge number of students coming to school at one time, so that we can stagger our arrival and our dismissal so that we could run through the protocols that we have put in place. And then they're also associated with the guidance that we're getting from our county health officials as well. In the afternoons, students would exit and go to their either home, or if you're going to be attending the Club HBG at our Healdsburg Community Center, they would be engaging with teachers virtually for virtual intervention. We understand that being in distance learning has taken a toll on many of us. And we do understand that in distance learning and in-person learning aren't the same. So there is some learning loss that may happen. And we want to put layers of support in place, and one being the in-person and then virtual intervention as well. I will say I don't have a distance learning schedule up right now, but it is going to mirror the in-person schedule as much as possible. And we were thinking about that too, because we didn't want to totally upend our distance learning schedule, as we have been putting in a lot of work getting used to a distance learning schedule throughout the course of the year. So a day in the life. There are a lot of things that we're going to have to get down in the first week of school. And so we're going to go ahead and talk through a few of those things. Getting ready before school. As I talked about what it means to feel safe and be safe, we're going to give you a lot of information, and we're actually going to rely on the parents quite often to put some of these things into place. One of those being a daily symptom screening for you at home prior to getting to school. Now, this is a series of questions and steps that you just move through as a parent with your student. Is your student feeling sick? Are they exuding certain symptoms? Should you or should you not send them to school? So we're going to rely on parents to do that prior to dropping their student off at school. Each student is going to be temperature screened and screened before coming into the building. What that's going to look like is this. A family is going to come to a specific assigned entry point. That's going to help us keep our number of students coming into the building at a manageable level. When you arrive, your student will come and step out of the vehicle, just to the outside of the vehicle on the curb, and they will get screened by a team of adults that are going to be on at each of our entrances. There are going to be two. If the student is super small and unable to get out of the car by themselves, that's okay too. The parent can come ahead, get the student down from the car, and then the parent would jump back in the car, and we would then do the screening for the student and then help chauffeur them into the classroom. When students are walking in the hallways, it's going to be directional. So they would travel from the car through the hallway directly to their classroom, where their teacher will be waiting for them to start engaging in learning when they arrive. Masks are going to be worn all day, aside from eating and drinking. Masks are going to be expected to be worn inside of the classroom as they're traveling through the hallways and at recess time. School is going to look different. Don't get me wrong. Hand washing is going to be readily available throughout campus. It's one of the first things we're going to ask students to do. We're super lucky to have individual classrooms with sinks. So every classroom will have a sink in the classroom or a sink assigned to that stable group or that classroom. And it's going to happen consistently throughout the day in the form of hand washing and or hand sanitizer. Entering and leaving the campus they're going to be staggered arrival times. And we are going to be communicating this out in a number of ways to our families so that you know when your class should be arriving and leaving. Again, we're going to ask help from families to arrive and to pick up at specific times, as close to those times as possible, to ensure that we're able to maintain social distancing upon entry and exit. So for instance, if you are coming, this is a school map, and this is something that we're going to be sending home for your reference as well. It has our classroom numbers, our teacher names, and just a general flow of traffic. If you notice, the red arrows are going to be the traffic that we expect our families, the direction that we expect our families to be driving in when they are dropping off. On First Street, which is near entry A, and on North Street, which is near entry B. Again, we're going to have a number of adults out to help you guys out. We just ask for your flexibility and your patience and to try to make sure that you are coming and going at the times that you are assigned. The main entrance is going to be for staff only, so we would appreciate it if you avoided that entrance altogether. If you noticed in the hallways, there are black arrows. Those indicate the direction that we expect students to walk in. If you notice the dotted lines on the recess yard, that indicates specific play areas that certain stable groups will be assigned to throughout the course of the week so that we're not mixing groups as we're arriving, walking through the halls, or playing on the recess yard. I'm all about color coding because it's a very good visual. And so this allows you to kind of see the entry and exit. Like those, the red lines are two-way, right? So they're not just one way, they're directional. So you'd be coming and going in the same route. So if you drop off at entry A and you are, for example, in Miss Hadley's class, you would walk straight up next to the library and into the classroom and then straight out that same direction. The color code is also indicator of how many classes would be leaving and coming at the same time. So all of the green classes that are near exit B would be leaving close to the same time and entering at the same time. All of the orange classes would then exit and enter at a different time. The same with our entry A, the orange classes would come and go at the same time. The green classes would then come and go at a different time. The classroom is going to look different as well. Our maintenance crew has been working really hard at making sure that our desks are 6 feet apart, 6 feet apart, and then ensuring that extra furniture is moved out so that we can make sure that we're maintaining that space if we do, let's say, have to walk through the classroom to get something on the other side. Teachers are going to be asked to teach from the front of the room as much as possible. Air purification is going to be in each classroom. Also, each classroom has access to windows that open to the exterior, which is going to help increase overall ventilation. And then also sharing spaces, we won't have those. So there are going to be no shared workspaces in the classrooms. Each student is going to be working at an individual desk, and we have some photos of what that looks like to follow. So as you can see, this is one of our classrooms that has been arranged with the 6-foot distancing between the desks. The teacher workspace is close to the TV, underneath the TV. This is one of our first classrooms that was set up. And our next slide is going to kind of give you a better idea of what it's going to look like. We do understand that some of our littles might need a reminder when the mask might slip below the nose, and then from the time that happens to the time they're reminded, there's going to be a little lag. There possibly could be. We understand that an added layer of just overall safety is important. Therefore, each desk is going to be equipped with a trifold plexi that's attached to their desk, just for another layer for both adult and student when they're in the classroom. Another thing is sharing materials. We talked about that. We are in the process of building individual material kits for each one of our classrooms with basic supplies that they can use to store next to their desk, and then they can put things in there to use on a daily basis or based on the project that they are doing in the classroom. Backpacks can come to school, but they will be stored next to that student's desk, and they will only be used by that student. Outside is going to look different as well. Recess. So classes will be assigned a play area to stay in at recess, and they will be monitored by adults during that time, of course. Stable groups will not be mixing. They will be with their stable group throughout the course of the day, and no large gatherings like assemblies and things like that. So here are some of the things that we're putting into play for recess. Our class, we talked about the dotted lines on the map. This is what it looks like in person. We have a series of cones that act as an indicator for students. If for some reason an equipment or something like that leaves a certain area, it will be taken, cleaned, and then given back to that class to use the next day. We want to make sure that there is both a solid understanding of students that if something goes into another play area, that it should not be returned to that play area, especially if it's touched by another student not in their stable cohort. The individual equipment buckets are going to be assigned to each class and will only be used by that stable cohort, and the materials will be cleaned on a daily basis. End of day protocols. So a grab and go lunch is going to be provided with a breakfast snack for the next day. We understand that some of our protocols might need some reworking, and this is something that might need some reworking. I do understand there's a huge gap in time from when a student at this age gets a snack to bring to school the next day, and it might be forgotten. We will have extras or something to give a student so that if they do forget something, they will. If we do need to, then we'll make sure that they get the grab and go lunch, and then a snack will be there for them the next day so that they won't have to worry about it. I definitely understand a TK or K student going from our site to after school care to home to back. There's some time there to where something like that can get lost. We want to make sure that our students are getting things that they need at school, so we'll make sure that that happens. Exit protocols. Exit protocols for HES campus are going to be very specific. Like I talked about, specific classrooms will be leaving at certain times of the school day. Each exit is going to have a team of adults, two of which will have walkie-talkies. The others will be the runners. This is going to ensure that we have students going to the correct car. Students are accompanied, right, during exit, especially if it is busy. And they're able to maintain some distance between each other in exit and in the exit process. We are going to ask for both your flexibility and patience as it is going to take a little time to work out, but I feel confident that our staff is ready and willing. But again, it is going to be very important that our families abide by their entry times and their dismissal exit times. Again, here is a site map that kind of shows the exit of classrooms and entry paths that we have set. Again, this will all be shared with you. Deep cleaning. Our custodial staff is working extremely hard, and here are some things that they're going to be doing on a daily basis. Mop and vacuum depending on the surface of the floor daily, wiping down all high touch surfaces daily and throughout the course of the day. They're of course going to be removing garbage. Bathrooms are going to be clean from top to bottom, as this is going to be a place that multiple students will use throughout the course of the day. And then electrostatic fogging, which is the device that the gentleman has in the picture. That's going to be used as needed. We're not going to fog the whole school on a daily basis, but if there is a classroom that does need to be sanitized, that will be the device that we do use. So we're going to go ahead and continue our talk about reopening. And here are some things that you should know. Distance learning is going to continue. When we surveyed our families, we had 100% of our families participate in the survey, which is amazing because it really helped us solidify a plan that's going to serve our families the best that we can. We had 66% of our families decide to come to in-person learning when we start in April 1st. 34% of our families decided to stay in distance learning, and that's absolutely okay. Throughout all of this, we understand that specific families have specific needs, and we're just happy to be able to provide both in-person and distance learning. However, what that has done is it is requiring us to rework some of our schedules. I'm sorry, some of our rosters. So that means that your student may be placed with a different teacher throughout the course of this year. And that is just based on the numbers of students that we needed to have in person, and then the number of students that that chose distance learning to stay in. I'm confident that the collaboration that's been happening amongst our teachers has been extremely strong. From going from a school with a charter and non-charter entity underneath the same roof to the collaboration that's happening now amongst grade levels, you may experience a new teacher, but I can assure you that the experience of learning and activities that they are doing are going to remain the same. Transportation, it will resume, and it will be free. So the family survey really drove a lot of this planning. With a majority of our families wanting to come back to in person, really got us thinking about what our schedule is going to look like, right? And so we're just really happy that we're able to do both distance learning and in person. What that means is we've got to kind of rework our staff to make it fit for our families. So some of our teachers are going to be in distance learning. Some of them are going to be in person. And we are in the process of working our rosters. Our goal is to get information via email, text, and in a letter sent home that outlines all of the information that you have: teacher placement, entry time, entry location, and all of that before spring break. So next week. So the family survey showed us that there was a need for students to be in person. And so therefore we've got to rework teachers that are going to be in person, and then the same with the students who chose distance learning. We're going to match them up with teachers that are going to be in distance learning as well. We understand that it's not ideal, right? I get it. I understand that. But a focus of ours has always been and will continue to be social emotional learning, whether it be distance or in person. We've got teachers on our team that are highly qualified at creating relationships quickly with students. And I feel very confident that the transition, if it does happen, to a new teacher is going to be seamless, right? We've also got a huge number of support staff. So we've got our school psychologist who's going to be working with students. All of our teachers have been trained in parts of the ruler social emotional learning curriculum that we're going to be implementing. We have a wonderful speech pathologist. We've got an RSP teacher that is amazing, super creative, and they are definitely going to be working together to making sure that we're meeting the needs of social emotional needs of our students, and then also pushing them academically through the remainder of our year. Go ahead, click it again, Karen. There we go. So forming, you can, I'm not sure why it's, there you go. So forming classroom groups, we did this based on the preference of being in person or staying in distance learning, and then balancing the groups. The priority for us was to make sure that your students are staying with their homeroom teacher as much as possible, right? We understand what that means, and that was definitely a priority of ours. And then based on the need of staffing, we then are going to be placing some teachers in distance learning only, and most of our teachers will be in person. I mean, it's just wonderful to see that we had 100% of our families participate in the survey, which really allowed us some solid planning to meet your needs. So next steps. As a staff, we read through, it's called a COVID safety plan. And it's a formal document that a template was given to us by the Sonoma County Office of Education, and that each school works through. And it is a detailed document that's about 17 or 18 pages long, with help from our Healdsburg Unified nurses, with the help from our Director of Student Services. We moved through that. It took about a week on my own, and with the help of Diane and Kristen and Varsi. And then as a staff, we read through it, and it's pretty solid. We've submitted it and are waiting for approval. And what it does is allows all of our staff to be on the same page so that we're all moving in the same direction. It also gives us the opportunity to give our families a detailed plan so that everybody understands what it is that is expected of them. Because like I said before, feeling safe is because we have the information. Being safe is implementing that information in real time. Right now, we're forming our learning groups. And again, we'll have that information to families by the end of next week. The parent compact. This is also a huge responsibility that we're asking parents to take. The parent contact or compact outlines expectations that we have of parents. It's nice to have expectations of parents because we know you're going to be able to meet them. The next piece is the first day back of school. Every day closer, I can just see it in the faces of our staff. We're getting excited. The one thing that has been lacking in our school site is the energy that students bring. We cannot wait. It is going to be like a light bulb when those kids get into our campus. Our campus is going to shine. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Varsi, Kristen, and Diane for the next few slides. It's all about health protocols. We do take this very seriously because we do understand that it is important to not only have a plan, but to make sure that we're following the guidance that has been set forth by our county, so that we can maintain an open school for the rest of our school year. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to them, and they will be moving through the rest of these slides.
Thanks, Jeff. That was great. I definitely can't wait to see those kids on campus. Also, it's going to be great to have the kids there and see them smiling and just getting back to some sort of normal. But with that said, you know, Varsi and I have been working, and Diane have been working really closely with the Sonoma County Department of Public Health and with the state just to get some specific things lined up so that when everybody's back at school, everybody feels good about it. And we're just going to go into some detail about a few of those things. And I do want you to know that you don't have to remember everything that we're saying because we have a student and family handbook that's available online. It's on the DO website. And there's also a COVID guide on the website. So you guys can refer to that if you have questions. And Varsi, Diane, Jeff, and I were all here to answer any questions that you might have, because some of these things seem very clear and then something comes up and it's not as we expected. So things are constantly changing and moving, but we're here for all the students and all the families. So the first thing, we can go to the next slide, we're going to talk about is masks, which Jeff had said are required, and they are required to be worn throughout the school day and recess. We are recommending 2 to 3 ply face coverings. Those can be disposable face masks. Those can be cloth face masks. The important thing about that is that we remind our students to keep them over their nose and their mouth, because that's a way for everybody to stay protected. And we are relying on you all as parents to just remind your children that that's the safest way to wear them. And I know that kids have been getting practice for a few months now, so hopefully they're all just experts at it and ready to shine with that. As far as washing your cloth face covering, it is recommended that those are washed every day. And there is information in the student and family handbook on how to wash them, how to dry them. You know, if you have to take it off, where to put it, things like just to keep things clean for everybody. So next slide, please. And going along with masks, these are a few masks or face coverings that are not acceptable to be wearing on campus. The first is a picture of the mask that has a valve. And we also saw those a lot during the fire season, and that would be an appropriate mask to wear during the fire season, because what happens is the air that you're breathing in, you know, is filtered, but then you exhale that out and it goes out into the environment that you're in. So that's not protecting everybody in the classroom if you're able to breathe that air back out of your own. Bandanas and gaiters are also not appropriate to be wearing on campus. Those are not recommended for use at this time. So we are keeping it very simple, 2 to 3 ply face coverings. That's all that we would like to see on campus right now. Thank you. Next slide. So, you know, Jeff was talking about the symptom screening that parents are going to have to do, and we're really asking and relying on you to do this before your student comes on campus. So this is a list of all of the symptoms that I'll go through. And the reason that we really want you to think about this before your students come to school is because of the way that COVID is spread. You know, it's spread through respiratory droplets. So if someone sneezes in the classroom and is too close to somebody else, which they shouldn't be because they're going to be 6 feet apart, but you know, those things can become in the air, and that's how COVID is spread. So we don't want someone at school that is coughing or sneezing in the classroom. So in the morning when you do your symptom check, these are the things you're going to be looking for. Does your student have a fever that's 100 or higher? A cough, a sore throat, any shortness of breath or difficulty breathing, fatigue, muscle or body aches. If they're not able to taste or smell, and this is a big one, just because this is some of these symptoms are very similar to just a common cold or something like that, you know, strep throat. But when you can't taste or smell, that should be a little bit of a flag there. And then going on to headache, congestion or runny nose, or nausea, vomiting, or diarrhea. Those would all, you know, not be reasons to send your kid to school. And again, those are also all in the family handbook. They're accessible to you. They're probably, they'll be around, well, you guys won't be on campus, so online is the best place to find them. So. Next, I think Varsi's, are you going to take from here, Varsi?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, so the next thing we're going to talk about is kind of 3 areas. Should I send my student to school if? So, please don't come to school if your student, you, or anyone else in your house has, number 1, signs or symptoms of COVID-19 in the past 10 days. So that's your student, you, or anyone in your house has those symptoms. We ask that you stay home. Number 2, Has your student, you, or anyone in your house been in close contact, so that's less than 6 feet for more than 15 minutes, with someone that is COVID-19 positive or has been told by a healthcare provider to get tested for COVID-19 in the past 14 days? And the third category, please don't come to school if your student, you, or anyone else in your house has tested positive for COVID-19 in the past 14 days. It's a really important slide. Next slide, please. So please remember, and Jeff kind of spoke to this when we started talking today, that it's a partnership, that we're really depending on parents to partner with us so we can make this work and we can keep our school open. When in doubt, do not send your student to school. Keep them home, call the front office, and we'll go from there to figure out, is it allergies? We can go through that process on the phone, and, Kristen and I are going to be available 5 days a week to work these things out. We'd much rather have you work it out with us with your student home. So when in doubt, just keep them home, please. The other thing that's super important is please do not pre-medicate for symptoms. So don't give Tylenol, Advil, Motrin, Aleve for a fever, and send your child to school. We also don't recommend giving children medications for diarrhea or nausea, anything to suppress a symptom. Because if they do develop a fever in the middle of the day or symptoms in the middle of the day, we do have to ask the child to go home. So we're just asking, from the get-go, please don't do this. Next slide, please. Okay, so what happens if a student is sick at school? So say my son felt fine in the morning. We did a symptom check, he felt great. He got to school, passed his temperature check, but in the middle of the day, he just started coughing. So here's what's going to happen when a student is sick at school with the COVID symptom. So basically, the teacher, another staff member will phone the office and say, this student has a cough. At that point, someone who is going to be dressed in something called PPE, which is personal protective equipment, who's been trained, is going to escort the student to our care rooms. So in our care room are separate areas where just the student and the trained professional will be in the room, and we'll be assessing the student. So we're going to assess the student, and if we think they need to go home, we're going to call you as parents and tell you need to please come and pick up your child. We're asking you to do that within 30 minutes of the call, because your student will be sitting in this room that is apart from everyone else, just with this trained professional waiting for you to come and get them. Please have your emergency contact list up to date. We're just going to go on down the line and keep calling people until we get somebody. And then as far as a student being released, so we'll release them into your care. You'll take them home. And then our COVID team, which is Kristen, I, Diane, will work with you over the phone to figure out when your student can return to school. So if your student has a symptom of COVID, we'll recommend COVID testing, and we'll work with you through this process with guidance from the Sonoma County Department of Public Health. We're following their guidance at every turn. So next slide. And this one's Kristen's.
So this is something that you all might have seen in the past, and this does not have to do with COVID. This just has to do with getting back to school. And if you have a medication that your student needs to, use while they're on campus, this form, this medication authorization form, has to be completed by your doctor, your child or your student's doctor, before medication can be given on campus. And then you, as the authorized parent or guardian, has to sign this form. So if there's students are still going to be able to go to the health office to get medication, that's going to be something that's scheduled. So the front office will know that that's happening, but this form needs to be filled out. Varsity or I need to look through this form, make sure that the order is appropriate, and then we can give medications in the front office. The only medication that a student should have in their backpack for some reason is an inhaler or an EpiPen. And if that's happening, we still need to have this form. We still need to know that that medication is on that child. So if you have any questions about that, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to answer any further questions. So I think that might be the end of oh, Percy, go ahead.
Oh, there was one other thing. The travel quarantine is still in place. So if this is really important for spring break, if we're traveling 120 miles out of our area, a 10-day travel quarantine is still advised. So I'd like you to think about that when you're making spring break plans. And we can add some extra information into the packet that Jeff is going to get to parents, and we can talk about the travel quarantine there. But just wanted you all to keep it in mind that it is still recommended.
Thanks, Farsi.
Great. Well, good. So, in monitoring questions and making sure that we're kind of answering as many questions as we can throughout the course of the actual presentation, I'm noticing that there are some that we actually didn't answer. So a couple of questions that we can go ahead and take right now. And these were questions that we asked families to submit prior to this. So are you taking into consideration older siblings' schedules? So unfortunately, we can't, especially at the junior high and high school. I know that for HES and FMC, we're making sure that if they do have siblings, they are going to school in the AM slot at FMC, and then the HES would be, we have one time slot. So we're definitely taking that into consideration. Part of the reason why it's impossible for us to take into consideration junior high is that their tentative schedule looks like they aren't going to school every single day, whereas we are, right? So that's unfortunately, we can't take that into consideration into planning. Let's see. Here's one. What type of communication can we expect from the school on how being back to school is going? Potential exposures, changes, etc. So I can talk to you about a little bit about kind of like what that is going to be. Granted, we're going to be communicating with families. It's difficult, I'm sure, for families when they're sending their student to school, but then they're not allowed on campus, right? So whether that be photos, we send out a newsletter every other week. Teacher communication is going to be happening consistently. And then engaging with your student. How are they doing? If they're not doing well and we haven't heard about it, please let us know. We've got, with a caring group of teachers, we've got support staff like in the form of school psych, and then just the caring individuals on our campus. We're definitely putting a focus on the social emotional needs of our kids coming back into campus. The one thing I will say is this. You always hear about how students are sponges. Well, they are, both intellectually and emotionally. So we can convey nervousness, anxiety into students based on how we interact. So as adults, it's going to be very, very important that we're taking care of ourselves to then take care of students, right? And we've talked about that as a staff. I know that, sometimes we are feeling anxious. It's okay. You don't have to suppress it, but definitely taking steps to maintain as cool of a demeanor as possible, especially because I know that there are going to be some nerves flying around on that first day when kids return back. Varsi, Kristen, and exposure notifications and protocols. What happens if there is an outbreak in one class, multiple classes? How is this communicated to parents?
So Varsi, do you want to take it or do you want me to?
No, you do it.
Well, so in our health and safety guide and in the site plans, you'll see a very articulated step-by-step approach to notification. It actually depends on the different scenario, and we follow guidance from the Sonoma County Department of Public Health for each scenario. But if it's just a general exposure, there's a general exposure letter. If we know that you came into close contact, there's another letter that goes out. But in any case, and whatever the case is, you'll be notified as soon as possible, but definitely within 24 hours. And I would gather that these would either be a combination of phone calls and emails, but not letters via mail. Darcy, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I mean, I think you'll definitely be informed if your class, if we have an exposure, if you had close contact, you'll be informed, and it'll be done within 24 hours. And we're following all the protocols from the health department. So,
And you
And that-
can also find those protocols on the district website, on the COVID link on the district website, as well as, like Diane said, in the guide, but there is a link on there too. So if you specifically want to know, it goes through each column and it'll tell you exactly what's happening.
Mhm. And I will add, and correct me if I'm wrong, there is only certain communication that we could then give broadly. It's not going to be specific using names. It's definitely a confidential matter. So there will be a broad communication, general communication, and then specific targeted communication based on exposure.
Exactly. Yes.
Yep.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yes.
I can take this one. Can we expect to see a return to PBL in the last few months of the year? Yes. However, it is going to look different. PBL is rooted in collaborative learning, in group learning, in group projects, communication, that kind of thing. That the shared learning spaces, the group projects, that kind of thing, no. But a rendition of PBL will happen, right? And so springtime is kind of like a time for life sciences. So I've had a couple of conversations with teachers who are really getting creative about introducing PBL, but in a more formatted way to abide by the guidance and the protocols that we do have in place. It's a good question. We talked about the masks and what type they should and shouldn't be. Okay, what types of support will the kids see in class on campus to help manage this big change? That's a great question. So on top of the amazing work that teachers are going to be doing around implementing the pieces of social emotional learning that we have, we do have a lot of support staff. For our younger students, we are going to be running kind of like a mock drop where you can come by the school. We would run through what it's going to look like for them. They can, see the adults that they're going to be interacting with. And that's something that we'll be communicating to families of our TK and Kinder students as well. I will say that it wouldn't hurt to, if you're on a walk around the neighborhood, if you're driving by the school, to stop and explain to your student, this is where you might enter school. Here's where you might enter school. Are you excited? Getting that positive association to going back to school is going to be important. Because I do understand that it can make some uneasy, especially when we've got such solid routines at home. But that is a good question. Well, I really wanted to thank all of the panelists that are here, Barcy, Kristen, Diane. I really appreciate you guys being here. Odds are we haven't answered all of your questions. If that is the case, please contact the school or myself. I can go ahead and make sure that my email information is available to you, and we can send out an Aries communication with who to contact if you have any questions, because I know that they're going to come up. I do. And I know it's going to take a little time, patience, and flexibility in all of this, but I am so happy that we're moving one step closer to getting our students back on campus. And it really takes a lot of work and energy and positivity. And part of that is coming from our families. So we know that we've got high expectations for our students. We still maintain high expectations for the adults that parent our students as well. And so I just really want to thank you all for being here this evening. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact the school with anything. Thank you guys, and we'll see you soon.